Hey ho, dear ones. Today we're talking about the fears of your spleen. That's kind of a funny title for an episode. However, in human design, there is an energy center called your spleen center. And our spleen is really connected to our fight and flight responses. So our spleen gets activated when we're out in the woods and we sense danger is upon us, as in a physical danger to us. And our spleen is also a very intuitive center. Some of you guys might have splenic authority, where you get those intuitive hits in the moment. It also regulates time and timing. And as the human design chart evolves, and there's going to be a big mutation or change in our human design chart in 2027, we are evolving or mutating so that the spleen is no longer our center of awareness. So that fight or flight response is no longer our primary energetic focus, if you will. And we are evolving to the emotional solar plexus being our primary energetic focus. And so that means that's an emotional center, also intuitive, but this is also the center that we use to hold the energetic or emotional resonance to manifest higher and higher intentions for our experience. So that means if we have intentions or dreams or desires to live a life of more joy, abundance, love, connection, we have the faith in our intention that it will arrive. And so we're taking action on an intention, right? And it's in our emotional solar plexus that we hold that faith that our intention is possible. Because if we're operating from the spleen, fight, flight, and we have an intention to grow a successful business, for example, anytime we experience something that feels like a setback, the spleen could get triggered. The fears that are a shadow side of our splenic energy gets triggered. And then we will reach the conclusion that it's not possible to run a successful business. However, if you have faith and you're holding that energetic resonance of a successful business, even when you perceive a setback, you can release what's no longer serving you, tweak and refine, show up again, holding that faith, holding that energy that I am here to make a massive impact, to serve my clients, and to make a livelihood doing it. But to get there, to get to that faith and that emotional resonance that we're talking about, we have to learn to manage the fears of the spleen. Because even when we evolve and go through the human design mutation, the spleen is still going to be part of our energy. And we're going to still have those shadow tendencies that is primarily fear that is held in the splenic energy. So that's why it's so important to be able to recognize the fear when it arrives and know what to do to release it, to tune back into and align back into your light. And that's what we're going to be unpacking in today's super powerful episode of Soul Guide Radio. So let's get to it. In today's episode, I reveal the 7 fears of the spleen energy center, how these fears hold you back without realizing it, and how you can shift back into your light when you recognize indeed a fear is present. We'll end on an invitation that will have you befriending the shadows of your spleen so that you can spot the shadow immediately when it arrives and step back into that highest expression of your energy. So please stay with me until the end. Hello, Soul Guide Circle. That is the name of this global and growing community of soul-guided leaders and entrepreneurs. In the Soul Guide Circle, we are using our spiritual gifts to grow prosperous, heart-led businesses that are on a leading edge of consciousness. Find a link to join our closed Facebook group at AllisonScammell.com or in the show notes. Today we're talking about releasing the fears of the spleen energy center. And so if you're new to human design, I invite you to head over to the show notes. We have a link to where you can run your chart and you can check out if you have any definition in your spleen. That is the triangle on the left side of your chart. It's the only triangle on the left side, and there are 7 numbers in there: 48, 57, 44, 50, 32, 28, and 18. Those are the 7 gates of the spleen. And we're really going to be going through those 7 gates. And when you run your chart, the first thing you can notice is whether or not you have definition or openness in your spleen. If it's a white triangle, you have openness. If it's colored in, you have definition. And whether you're open or defined, it doesn't matter. We all hold. This is where we can still dip into a lot of fear. I would say the biggest thing to be aware of if you have openness is that you can have a tendency, right? It's, human design just points us to our tendencies, not to an absolute that this is this way or that way. And with openness, you have a tendency to hold on to things, people, places, situations for longer than what serves you. And so it's a nice idea if you have openness here to ask from time to time, am I holding on to something for longer than I should or for longer than what serves me? And what we really are doing today, though, is exploring the gates. So again, if you're on the newer side of human design, you can check to see which, if any, of your spleen gates are defined. And the gates are the little numbers inside of the triangle. And if the number is colored in, it's defined. And if it's not colored in, then it's not defined. And whether you have definition or not with any of these gates, we all hold all of these 7 fears I'm about to go through. It's just that if you have definition in any of these gates, it is likely that this fear is going to pop up more. You're going to have a more consistent relationship to this fear. So just something to pay attention to. But remember, we all have all parts of the chart, and we certainly have all struggled with the fears I'm about to go through at one point or another on our path. So let's get into these fears that we hold in our spleen center, because it's really, really, really going to be important to learn how to recognize, and it's not avoid or end fear. That's not the goal. The goal is to spend less and less time in these fears, to notice when we're taking decisions, especially important decisions, from this fear energy. And so we can recognize it right away when it arrives, shift out of it, and spend more and more of our day and our experience in higher energy, and certainly always making choices and the big choices from our higher energy and not this fear energy. Okay, starting with gate 48. This is the fear of inadequacy and not having enough depth. So we all have this fear. If you have definition here, which I do, and on the other side of this fear, you have an unending depth and a powerful potential for mastery when you decide to push through the fear and have the courage to take the first step. Now, human design folks will say that overcoming these fears is really about pushing through and facing the fears. And I agree with that. However, I think there's a really important step that isn't always talked about that has to happen first. And I'm going to be revealing that step in just a sec. Next, we go to gate 57, which is the fear of the future and the unknown. I think this is a particularly relevant fear at the moment because we do feel like we live in such an uncertain time. So this gate 57 fear can really be rattled. And on the other side of this fear is an intuitive sense around what's happening in the present moment that can help you navigate the unknown and move through any uncertainty you feel about the road ahead. So you can really see on the other side of these fear shadows is really brilliant light. And we all have the light that I'm mentioning here, whether or not the gate is defined or not. Getting into the gate 44, which I have, which is the fear of the past repeating itself, or the fear of past mistakes happening again. This is a big one for me. So I think we all have this fear of the past repeating itself, which is one of the big reasons why we can feel like we're stalled out with manifestation. Like, why aren't we manifesting the dreams that we want to manifest? Because lots of reasons, but one of them could be an unconscious fear that the past performance will repeat. So if you haven't been able to manifest it yet, but you've tried, then you just fear that spinning of the wheels will just continue. On the other side of this fear is the ability to spot patterns from the past so you and others don't have to repeat past mistakes. Moving to gate 50, this is the fear of taking on too much responsibility. I've noticed with my clients who have this gate defined, they can fear their own success because the fear will tell them if you get the success you want, it'll just be too much responsibility and it'll lead to burnout and unhappiness. And so when we release that, we find on the other side of this fear a powerful intuitive knowing and discernment around the right responsibilities and commitments to take on so that you can stay in flow and energetic harmony. Then there's gate 32, which I think we all have a piece inside of us, and that is that fear of failure. And I love what's on the other side of this fear, and that is the instinct for knowing what will sustainably work and what may not work. So you actually have, especially if you have definition here, you have the nose for success and failure. So you can really see the powerful light on the other side of these shadows. Moving on to gate 28, this is the fear of not finding your purpose or something worth fighting for. The fear of not finding your purpose or something worth fighting for. And on the other side of this fear is an instinct for what is worth the fight and which risks are worth taking. So you can see how much intuition and instincts are in the spleen, which in high expression really allows you to step into your power. And lastly, we have the gate 18. This is the fear of authority or challenging authority. On the other side of this fear is an instinct. Again, there's that word instinct for what can be fixed and made better in the world around you. Okay, moving on to how these fears hold us back without us realizing it. So I want to use the gate 44 as an example because this is an important gate in my system. It's part of my unconscious sun, and I have definition here, of course. And so I have this fear of the past repeating itself, especially past mistakes, repeating itself. And so when we're young and we hold these fears without realizing it, we can inadvertently get into a fear loop with these fears. So when I was pursuing dreams and intentions when I was, in my teens and 20s and into my 30s, and I didn't realize that I had this fear tendency, then anytime a past mistake would happen, I'd be like, oh, there it is. There's proof that my past always catches up with me. And that would create a bigger fear loop, playing on autopilot, saying, the past is going to catch up with you. You're going to repeat a past mistake. And that would actually put me in the energy of fear, which would have me attracting situations that would have me repeating past mistakes and reinforcing this fear. So it was a loop that just kept growing and growing and growing. And I would be like, see, there it is again. The past always sneaks up on me, right? When I started to get to know human design and get to know my energy and get to know these tendencies, I started to heal these fears and release them and reset them. And then I used all of that past experience because, hey, listen, it's not all for nothing. I used that amazing experience to tap into my light, which is spotting patterns from the past to help myself and others to not repeat past mistakes, which I feel like I'm really in high expression of gate 44 just in this podcast episode, telling you how to identify and shift into something higher. I'm really using high expression of gate 44 in recording this episode. And when I started to recognize and heal and shift into my light, then I was able to heal that fear loop. But when you don't realize your loop is playing, or it's been playing for a really long time, it's hard to detect because indeed it's been playing so long. So that's how these types of fears can really hold us back, and we don't even recognize it because the loop has just been playing on autopilot. So what we want to do is turn off the autopilot, recognize the loop, and it really starts with noticing these fears. If you have definition in one of the gates, you can start with where you have definition. Notice when those types of fears pop up. And you can just ask the question, am I fearing inadequacy? Am I fearing the future? Am I fearing the past? Am I fearing taking on too much responsibility? Am I feeling failure? Am I feeling not finding my purpose? Am I fearing authority or challenging authority? If you get a yes, you just want to go in and feel the feels. Feel the feels that all of this fear triggers. And it may be more than fear. There could be some shame, there could be some worthlessness, there could be some anger, there could be sadness, there could be burnout, fatigue, which is a feeling, exhaustion. So feel the feels, breathe, release. Go to your heart space at the center of your chest and go into your light. Just set the intention of going into the light that's on the opposite side of the fear. So when I do that and I go into my light of 44, which is on the other side of fearing the past, and just feel your light, be in your light, and you can ask your light for a message. And when I go into the light of my 44, I get the message, you are brilliantly seeing the patterns and sharing with others. And this is high expression of this gate. Yes, I feel that. And again, I want to repeat that we all have all parts of the chart. So you want to go with any of the fears that resonate with you, any of the 7 fears. If you have no definition in your spleen, you're still going to hold on to some of these fears. You're still going to be plugged into social conditioning. And we have tons of collective fear that are anchored in one of these 7 fears. So go with what's feeling most fear triggering or most prominent and explore in there. Notice if you might be on a loop without realizing it. Feel the feels, breathe, release, and then tune into your light. And we really thank our shadow. That's why I said at the beginning of the episode, I said in the invitation, which we've now arrived to, I'm going to leave you with an invitation that will have you befriending your shadow, right? Because it is a relationship. A shadow tendency is just something that it's a part of who we are, and it's a part of where we can have a tendency to dip into. And our goal, our intention is really to spend less and less time in shadow until we are eventually in 100% light and we've reached enlightenment. But until we reach enlightenment, it's about identifying our shadow and having the tools to shift back into light. So it's not about denying, thwarting, stuffing down. That's how we get started, and that's how those fear loops get going, and our subconscious playing on the loop on an autoplay and having us living from our fear and taking choices, making big life choices from our fear. And that gets us really, really out of energetic alignment to who it is we truly are and what it is we truly want to do. So that invitation is about befriending your fear shadows and going through the 7 fears that we talked about in this episode and just noticing which one feels most prominent in your life right now. Can you do the feel the feels, breathe, release, and go into your light? And what message are you getting from the light on the other side of your fear? And I'd love to know. DM me on Facebook and Instagram or send me an email to allison@allisonscammell.com. I would love to know what message you receive. And also, I'd be super delighted for a listener review. Head on over to wherever it is you listen, hit subscribe, go to the link that says ratings and review, and let me know specifically what you received from today's episode. And I will read your amazing words on the air. And as always, until next time, may your soul guide the way.